Okay, first of all, I should probably reassure you, I'm not going to put Jen's face up for the entire introduction to this video because I find the look of her so triggering, knowing how badly she betrayed Maddie and how badly she let down Maddie. But I figured that since this video is about her, that I should at least start with a screenshot of her face. I did include Maddie in it because that's what we're all here for. Okay, I did originally set it to be up for 60 seconds, but I just had to change it straight away. So, most of you are familiar with this Rock and Kit Kat account that Jenn had. This is not any breaking news. This is no wonderful new discovery. In fact, the original live blog, or whatever it was, is no longer there. If you follow the link, it basically goes there and says that it's been deleted. You can reserve that page for yourself should you wish to. Thankfully, there is an internet archive, aka the Wayback Machine. This is one of those brilliant creations where a lot of the time you can find things have been preserved there. Of course, when it comes to something like a journal that is on a host site, then what you are going to get is a little different from how it appeared when it was live. So what I'm going to do first is play a brief introduction from Paula's channel from when she covered this. And she covered this sometime last year before it was actually deleted. So in the Wayback Machine you can see that it was deleted in December of last year. So it's been down for over 6 months now. Paula had the original version. So if you want to go to her channel after this to follow the original version, I'll provide the link, because what is missing on the Wayback Machine is comments that were made on her posts. So basically what was preserved on the Wayback Machine is the posts only. And I'll show you that in a minute, but let's first of all listen to Paula's explanation, because this shows you a bit more about this particular Rock and Kit Kat account before we actually jump in and discuss it.
Anyway, this journal was created way back on January 24th of 2004. However, it was last updated apparently February 22nd, 2010. And it shows Jennifer's birth date, March 2nd. It doesn't say 1988, but we know that's her birth date. So she's around 20 when she starts posting. The location is Flushing, New York. And it even had a link to her MySpace, Mi Espacio. I don't know if that's how you say it, but of course, the MySpace isn't there anymore, unfortunately. Her bio says, indecisive, loving, and amazing. That pretty much sums me up.
So like I said, Paula has it in its original format on her channel. She has a Maddie Soto playlist, which contains it, but I will also make sure that I will do my best to remember to link it down below in the description section. If I forget to do so, please ask me in the comments section to please link Paula's video. And I will make sure that I link it. And that way you can also have a look at what it looked like when it was live and have a listen to the comments that were made by her friends on her various bits. Now, Paula mentioned in her coverage of it that she thought there must have been deleted posts. But I went back through all the different saves of this page. So for those of you who may not be familiar with the Wayback Machine, the way it works is that you need to go in first and save the page yourself, I believe. I think sometimes it will save pages, but there are pages where I've basically found a page, I've wanted to preserve it, I've gone to check on the Wayback Machine and it's not there, and it's asked me to preserve the page myself. So I don't know if there is a automatic process also. What I do know is that the Wayback Machine will do saves at various times, and it keeps all those saves. So with Jenn Soto's account, there's multiple saves up until December of last year, which is the point when the account was deleted. And then you get the screen that you now see on the internet. So I went back through all those saves to see if there were any entries that maybe Paula missed on her channel. The only one she didn't get was the very, very first one that appears on the Wayback Machine, which was a little bit earlier than the first one that Paula came across. So it must have been deleted by Jenn sometime prior to when Paula actually had a look at the web page. But like I said, if you wanted to see these entries in their original format and hear the comments that were made by Jenn's friends, then I will link the video that Paula did down below so that you can go and watch that. Please watch mine first though, because I've actually already put quite a bit of time into preparation for this video before even beginning to record. So I would like to have a few views on this video. It's always appreciated. And while I'm at it, please hit the like button too for me, because that'll help me get this out there into the algorithm and get it seen by more people. Now, with all that said, what I want to do is I'm going to work through all these entries that were made by Jenn, and I just want to discuss basically my observations of it from a more of a psychology perspective, looking at what's going on possibly in her mind at the time that she's making these posts, and how this relates to what happened with Maddie and her relationship with Stearns. So let's look at this first entry. Now, I'm not sure why this first one was adequately preserved, because it was preserved in a different way. Maybe it's a change in the Wayback Machine, but let's have a look at this first one anyway. Like I said, because it's an archive, you don't really get to see the original format of it, and you can see there's a few spots where photos have gone. So at the top here, she's written, "I admit that I'm just a fool for you." And then down the bottom is that original post that Paula was talking about, which is really, really short, so didn't really miss much there. Friends only HOS. So that was November 2004. It appears there was an image with it, and there were 5 songs for your mixtape. Just an aside, I find it amusing that she was still referring to a mixtape, because I would have thought that by 2004 we weren't even thinking about mixtapes. I mean, you know, CDs were around at that point in time. Maybe not so much of the things like iTunes and stuff, but certainly for the most part it was CDs. Although I guess mixed CD doesn't quite have the same ring, does it? Anyway, let's move on to her New Year's resolution from the 1st of January 2008. Now, I don't know if there were any other entries between these two. If they were, they are gone forever, because they were not preserved on the Wayback Machine. So, New Year's resolution. Yes, I remember when I was young and naive and used to make New Year's resolutions that were just really nothing that was ever going to happen. So her New Year's resolution is to have a happier year and to surround myself with amazing and positive people. But my main one is to lose weight. Being a single fatty is no fun, ha ha. Oh, and to do better in school, I really need to. And that'll come out in the later posts if you're not familiar with this. Last night was amazing. I started it off on the right foot. I spent the night with my loving family and danced the night away. It was funny too, 'cause they all got messed up. I loved my Colombian side. Ha ha. I hope you had an awesome New Year's Eve/day. For your mixtape. So I'm wondering if, because it comes up in every entry, if this For Your Mixtape is actually one of those widgets like you have with WordPress, where maybe on the original site, if you clicked on it, it would take you to a song or to 5 songs. So it might have actually been a link. So this would have been a few months before Jen's 20th birthday. I'm going to presume that she probably was in New York by this point in time. So I would imagine that she is referring to, when she says with her family, that she's referring to Juan's side of the family, because we know that when she was living in New York, she was living with Juan. That's a standard thing for people to say, to have a happier year and surround themselves with amazing and positive people. One thing we've seen about Jenn is this chameleon side of her, where she tends to tell people what she thinks they expect her to say, or she will mirror what they've already said. We saw that especially in the long interview that she did, where she was pretty much repeating some of the words that the detective used in questioning her. And I'm thinking this is what has also happened here. To me, it sounds like her just repeating something that she would expect to see on someone's post as a New Year's resolution. It is your boilerplate New Year's resolution, essentially. I don't think this has come directly from Jenn. I think this has come from Jenn thinking, what should a person normally say as a New Year's resolution? This sounds like the thing to say. Now, I truly believe that even at this point in time, Jenn would have been a narcissist. So there is probably also an element here where we can see in her later posts, and we can see in this one, and I'll come back to that she is struggling with her own self-concept. And I think that part of this whole wanting to surround herself with amazing and positive people is this sense of other people bringing her down, not wanting to take full responsibility for her own actions, for where she's at that point in time. Because she goes on to talk about her main focus is that she wants to lose weight because she doesn't want to be a single fatty. This, coming from a 19-year-old, is a little bit sad, because at 19, obviously, if you are eating healthily, then you shouldn't be so concerned with your weight. You should maybe exercise, eat sensibly, but not really blame yourself for who you are. And it seems like her whole self-worth is based around her weight, because that is her number one focus. And she blames that, by the sounds of it, for her being single. Now, we know that this is a period of time when her and Tyler weren't together. So they had been dating in, I think, 2004. We know they separated and he went into the forces. And then they connected up again in, I think it was like 2009. So I have no idea in terms of time frame how long it was since she'd broken up with Tyler when she did this post. But it seems like her big focus at this particular time as a 19-year-old was on her self-image, and she felt that her being overweight was making it harder for her to basically get into a relationship. So already we're seeing an obsession here with the need to be in a relationship, the need to have that additional person to give her self-worth. There's definitely a level of insecurity and a sense of inferiority, in my opinion. And then we get her talking about the whole big party the night before and spending the night with family and dancing the night away and finding it amusing that they got all messed up. I think what I'm reading into that is a sense of belonging. You know, it was that fun experience where she was surrounded by loving family, so she felt accepted in that situation. And saying it was funny because they got all messed up, obviously, somehow she felt connected with all that in terms of they were having fun, they were laughing, so probably to her, that gave her that emotional connection, made her feel, even if she wasn't messed up herself, she doesn't say that, but it seems like it gave her that emotional connection. They were all having fun and she was a part of it. So it's that sense of belonging. Saying it was amusing is kind of including herself in the actions. She may not have gotten messed up like they did, but she thought it was amusing, so she was a part of that. It's that inclusion, the need to belong somewhere. And that's what this is saying here. She's saying that she felt like she belonged there. I do apologise. I know I'm not the most eloquent person when it comes to explaining these kind of things. I hope I am at least giving some clarity here. I think we need to recognise too that if this was the first year that she was in New York, now I don't know if it was, but if it was, this could have been the first time that she's experienced this kind of New Year's Eve. So it may seem overly exciting for her. I'm also going to take a guess here, since the legal drinking age in the US is 21, that it's a bit like those of us in Australia before we were 18, and there is that sense of adventure to be underage and to be part of that sort of situation. I mean, for me, many of my friends, by the time we were 19, we'd done the underage drinking thing, because when you hit 18, you're legally able to drink and then all the fun wears off. So I guess for a 19-year-old, it's probably like, 17-year-old in Australia, the whole fun of being involved in a situation where people are getting on the grog and you can be a part of that even though you are underage. Now, this is the header that was preserved for her journal. Living is easy with eyes closed. I think we've all heard that quote multiple times now for Jenn. I don't think that photo is really how it is meant to appear, but that seems to be one of the few photos that's been preserved on the site. Unfortunately, it is a really, really disturbing quote when you look at what happened, basically. Now, I'm just going to warn you, I'm not going to wade into American or Australian politics on my channel, so I'm just going to read this one and move on. So this is 20th of January 2009. Today I'm proud to be an American. We're making history today for having the first African American president in the United States. It feels like November 4th again. Thank you, Barack Obama, for this hope you're giving us all. Or you're given us all. She's not good with the grammar, is she? Now this one is an interesting one. It's dated 2nd of February 2009. And it starts with, "Baby, if it's our fault, maybe I can meet you in the morning." Which is an interesting thing, given that we know that her and Tyler did hook up at some point in 2009. And I'm wondering if this is possibly a direct reference to that. Who knows? "I've only been here for a month and this is exactly what I needed. I needed this break, a break from life and responsibility, and from all of this. I've gained clarity. I feel like I'm ranting while high, but I'm not. I swear. I just have this amazing feeling that I can't describe. I'm happy, just so damn happy." Could well be that she hooked up with Tyler the night before. "I guess I've found myself. I've decided what I want to do in school and the rest of my life. I've also decided that the city life isn't It just isn't for me. I prefer the country and suburbia. I want space and freedom. I hate that there aren't many trees here. O-Town, expect my arrival pretty soon, hopefully before my 21st birthday, which is exactly 1 month away. God damn, I'm getting old. Edit. So I'll call my mother and let her know that I've figured out what I want and how happy I am. She tells me, that's great, but you can't come back and live here. Thanks, Ma. Hopes and dreams totally crushed. So don't expect me anytime soon. I have to say, what I'm seeing here is early signs of her bipolar. When you look at the way these posts run, she's definitely going up and down, and she seems to have been on a bit of a high when she wrote this. She has come up with some idea for her future, and that idea apparently involves moving back to Orlando, but at the same time, but then she says that she's been crushed because her mother has said that's great, but you can't come back and live here. And she finishes with hopes and dreams totally crushed. So it seems that at 20, her idea of any sort of success also involved still being heavily reliant on her parents. So at this point in time, she was living with Juan in New York, and for her, moving back to Orlando seemed to consist of moving in with her mother regardless. So there's no sense of reality here, no sense of, okay, well, I want to move back to Orlando. I don't want to move in with my mother, so I'm going to do my best to get money together for a deposit on an apartment, to pay rent on an apartment for however long until I can find a job, and then I'm going to start looking for work. To me, her reaction to Yolanda saying, yeah, you can't come back and live here, suggests that she is not someone who has taken responsibility for her own life. And with that regards, I think a lot of people have taken the approach with this that, well, Yolanda can't be very nice if she said you can't come back home. But we don't know what's gone on in the background. What we do know is that even in these entries in this live journal, Jenn is flip-flopping from one thing to the next. She doesn't know what she wants to do or where she wants to be, but she doesn't want to do it as an adult. She wants to do it in the home of one of her parents. So maybe it's just a case of Yolanda is trying to give her that shove to get her to actually take responsibility for herself as opposed to grifting off Yolanda for her entire life. And let's face it, she has not really ever gotten on her feet because she's never really shown the motivation to actually stick at something and succeed. What we hear is that she's basically, only ever held jobs for a short period of time. Her entire life. I mean, this woman is, 37, 38 now? And still drifting. Now, I have to admit that I find it kind of amusing that she refers to Orlando as the country. Because in Australia, the country is basically, your nearest neighbour is probably half a kilometre away. So, Orlando, to me, that's suburbia. Definitely not country. But, compared to New York, I can see what she's saying there. And I can certainly relate in terms of city versus being, out in a regional area. I don't go down to Melbourne very often because it is all just buildings, old buildings that are covered in disgusting graffiti. There's some really lovely graffiti down in Melbourne, but at the same time there's a lot of just really, the classic graffiti that, graffiti, basically, it destroys the buildings, it destroys the views because it's just ugly. It has no artistic foundation. It's just people with a spray can who want to be destructive. And, I go down to Melbourne and I find myself noticing all the fumes from the vehicles because it is so busy, it is so crowded. And you get back to Bendigo and you've got just the open skies, trees everywhere. Most of the streets here are tree lined, and you've got a lot of, houses like mine where you've got a large block of land. It's on a large block of land, so, you've got a big garden, birds everywhere, which you've heard. And it is a completely different feeling, and you feel so much more alive when you're in somewhere like this. I mean, even for me, this is still a little bit too suburban. I mean, I prefer to be right out in the country area, but I get what Jenn is saying. Now, if we didn't know the rest of the story, I could sit there and say, well, 21, yeah, that's fine to be still not really settling and not getting yourself together. But we know that she's not achieved that full stop ever. So, I've decided what I want to do in school and the rest of my life. Well, that didn't last long. And apparently, that was dependent on basically grifting off Yolanda. Because she's saying, this is what I want to do, but I can't do it because I can't move back in with my mother. Not, this is what I want to do, so I'm going to find a way to make it happen. And I'm certainly not saying here that parents shouldn't let their children come home when they need a step up. But I don't think that's the situation here with Jenn. I honestly feel that she has this sense of entitlement. The way she's basically saying here that she can't move home, can't go and achieve her dreams because her mother won't let her move back home. And we know that Juan purchased that townhouse in 2012, so 3 years after this. Did he do that because Jenn wanted to move back to Orlando and Yolanda wouldn't let her move in? Did he actually do that because Jenn was incapable of actually getting out there and trying to stand on her own 2 feet? We know he lived in that townhouse till about 2020, but why did he up and move from New York to Orlando? Was it because Jenn was incapable of making that move without someone to grift off? So the next post isn't for another 2.5 weeks. And notice the time, 2:24 a.m. So it's 19th of February 2009. And she's written here, totally relaxed and listening to the Beatles at 2:24 a.m. Must admit, when I was her age, I would have been probably up at 2:24 a.m. watching late night television or something, winding down from working a late night while I was working 40 hours a week and doing full-time university. But I'm guessing that's not what's going on here with Jenn. Speaking of the Beatles, I've decided that when I do have children, they'll be named after Beatles songs. Jude, Lucy, Prudence, Pepper, Michelle, Eleanor, Penny, Lane, Mackenzie. The only one I don't get is Mackenzie, but I'm sure if someone told me, I'd be like, oh yeah, of course. Can you tell I want girls? This makes me so angry because she got a girl. She got a beautiful, beautiful girl. And she really didn't care about her. She really didn't give her the start in life that she deserved. She didn't protect her. She never deserved to have any children, and I really hope she doesn't have any more. So much has gone on in the last couple of weeks. I've decided to move back home. I'm doing this whole Orlando Tally FSU move. I don't really know what that means. I think I've got it figured out, whatever. Don't know when the permanent move will be, before May for sure. So she's moving universities. I'm thinking. Going to Florida University. You have to help me out with this because what she's referring to here, I'm not quite sure, but it does seem like she seems to think that she's going to change and go to another university. I'll be home Saturday to visit, the 21st through the 4th. I was excited to come home, but plans seem to be effing up already, per usual. I might extend my stay until the 9th so I can spend my sis' birthday with her in Miami. I miss her so much. I'm guessing that's probably Stephanie. I'll be spending my birthday at home. 21, geez, I feel hella old. So, she hasn't said here what her actual arrangements are in terms of moving back to Orlando, but it seems like she's probably attempting to change to a different university so she can drop out of that one. Now, given how manipulative Jenn is, I'm willing to bet, and obviously we're not going to know this, but I'm willing to bet that having been originally told by Yolanda, yep, but you're not moving back here, Jenn has worked to manipulate her to move back in with her. Because if she's saying that she's definitely moving back to Orlando, I can't see her actually making the effort to try and set herself up on her own. So to me, that says that she's found someone who will allow her to move in, and I'm guessing that's probably going to be Yolanda. It seems to me that despite the negativity that she points towards Yolanda in these posts, that she is very heavily reliant on Yolanda and does expect Yolanda to give her this support. I do wonder though if this could be one of those relationships where there is a little bit of emotional abuse going on, where perhaps her relationship depends on what day it is in terms of how her and Yolanda relate to each other. You know, that situation where one day the mother might be super, super supportive, is going to buy you a car or offers for you to move home, offers to go and buy you a bunch of groceries because you're stone broke, and the next day knocks you down flat and basically makes you feel like a complete utter loser. And I'm certainly not claiming that that is the case with Yolanda and Jenn, but it certainly seems to be a rather complicated relationship. Jenn definitely feels a need for Yolanda's approval. She definitely feels a need to be connected with Yolanda, but at the same time, it sounds like she gets shot down quite frequently. Like I said though, that could actually be connected more to Jenn's personality or Jenn's failure to launch rather than any sort of emotional abuse. I mean, it is so easy to look at these posts and claim that Yolanda's the bad mother here, but we're only seeing one side of the story. And we're seeing one side of the story from someone who we know to be extremely narcissistic and extremely manipulative. And those sort of behaviours don't develop in your 30s. They're behaviours that develop at a very young age or are possibly behaviours that you have been born with. So we need to keep in mind when we're looking at these that even at this point in time, she is certainly narcissistic and manipulative. Okay, I've got these slightly out of order here, so I need to go to the bottom first. 17th of March 2009, scatterbrained. I'm starting to get quite irritated at myself for not being able to make a decision. I don't know what I want, therefore no decision shall be made soon. Effing A. I hate having so many options on my plate. I am a dreamer, I just wish I were more of a realist. And then for your mixtape, which presumably that must be a link to a song because she's got it on each one of these posts. You know, when I look at these posts, I do think that she was struggling with undiagnosed bipolar even this early on. I think what for her appeared to have been a lack of motivation may have been symptoms of her issues with her mental health. And that becomes a nasty cycle because you struggle with that motivation, you struggle to make those decisions, and then that affects your own sense of self-worth, which makes it even harder for you to feel motivated because you feel inadequate, you feel useless. And I'm not trying to make excuses for Jenn here, but certainly what I'm seeing here is someone who is manipulative, someone who is narcissistic, but someone who also has mental health issues that have been, at this point in time, undiagnosed. And I think that perhaps people around her have seen how narcissistic and manipulative she is and not recognised that actually there is a deeper issue going on here in terms of mental health, and that she possibly may have needed help with that in order to actually get somewhere in life. That said, when you're looking at someone who is narcissistic and manipulative, that is a strategy that they use for getting around these mental health issues that they have, because they learn how to manipulate people to get them to basically do what they need for them. For example, one buying the townhouse in 2012. I strongly suspect that him moving to Orlando may have had connections with Jenn being manipulative, may have had connections with Jenn's mental health issues, may have been a father wanting to try and help out his daughter who seemed to be failing in life. I'm also a bit cynical about this comment, I hate having so many options on my plate, because in Jenn's case, I think actually what is going on here is that a majority of those things where she's saying so many options are unobtainable for her, unrealistic ideas. So it may be that she actually has limited options, but in her mind there's all these other things that she'd like to do, but that she cannot achieve. Whether that is because of her own mental blocks or whether that is because of genuine things that are preventing her from doing those things. For example, saying, I want to become a doctor, but you don't have the academic credentials to get into any of the degrees that are going to get you in that direction, that sort of thing. I mean, it's possible that she's a high achiever and she did have many, many options. But when we look at the other posts here, I'm going to suggest that that was definitely not the case. Now, this post on the 20th of March, I love Yoshi, and I'm not lying, you, Howre. Good night, and this was at 12:29 a.m. No idea. I'm guessing it was a response to somebody. Certainly shows that she did enjoy a bit of gaming at that age. So we have another post here on the 20th of March, and please forgive my attempt at speaking Spanish. Nunca me he sentido tan solo como ahora estoy en una juala. I looked up the translation in that because I only recognised a few words, and the translation comes down to, I've never felt so caged like I do now. The last word, juala, or however you pronounce it, looks like it is referring to jail, but clearly cage, jail, similar thing. That's kind of deep. I'm wondering if this is before or after she's moved back to Orlando. But again, we're seeing this roller coaster in terms of her moods and her general ability just to cope with life. I've decided I'm going to write more Spanish. I need to correct it and expand my vocabulary. I also need to figure out where to put the accents. Yep, that's it. I have to say, I understand. I spent a bit of time doing Spanish on Duolingo. I found it really hard, so I switched back to practicing my Japanese instead. So what I'm just saying here is, yeah, I understand Spanish is not an easy language to learn. Now, it's interesting the way that the archives have saved some of these posts differently, because in this one it's actually maintained a photo, although it's got a stamp across the photo. I'll show you that in a minute. So this is 23rd of March, 12:13 a.m. Last night was fun, adventure and tacos in Spanish Harlem with Steph. Party. And my first real game of beer pong, and I won. Oh, got drunk too, which never happens. Had a boy hold my hand, freaked out and left. Ha ha. What the hell was that about? Yeah, good question, because we know that at that point in time she'd already had Tyler as a boyfriend. She'd already hooked up with him again at some point in time. So clearly she's talking about Stephanie, her sister, or at least we can presume that that is the case. I'm thinking that she may have been hanging with Stephanie's friends, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Stephanie is actually older than Jenn, isn't she? So it's possible that the freak out being having her hand held by a boy was because he was a fair bit older than her. We know that I think Tyler is slightly younger than Jenn by a few years. I'm not sure, I'd have to check on that. That's just come out of my brain, so it could be entirely wrong. But he was either slightly younger or similar age to Jenn. So, for her at that point in time as a 21-year-old, she was probably lacking the maturity to connect with an older guy. So that's possibly why she freaked out. Although referring to him as a boy could also mean that it was a much younger guy. So what we're seeing here is a few things. Definitely for her, that connection with Stephanie, presuming it is her sister, that is something that is significant to her and gives her, I guess, a sense of self-worth. Maybe Stephanie's a bit more accepting of her than the rest of the family. Her idea of fun is basically, it appears to me, is being the centre of attention. She won the game of beer pong. So she got to be the centre of attention there because she won. Getting drunk, well, for a 21-year-old, that's neither here nor there, is it? A lot of 21-year-olds do get into parties and drink too much, etc. Again, talking about a boy holding her hand and freaking out and wondering why, because we've seen from her history that she does seem to have this reliance on being in relationships. She does have this reliance on having people who place her at the centre of her world. And I think that's what we're seeing here with this particular description of this night. It was about her, in her opinion, in her mind, being the centre of attention. And also, I guess, that sense of being included. It was a party, it was fun, and, she was the life of the party because she won beer pong and she got drunk. And, she even had a boy hold her hand, which is that whole sense of self-worth. I'm worth it because the boy held my hand. Now, obviously, what I'm saying here is not something that I would apply to everyone if I were to read this post. But what I'm doing here is I'm basing this on what we know of Jenn. And like I said, in terms of the narcissism and the manipulation, what I see is that this is a lifelong thing. So in terms of her, this was about being included and about being seen. I do feel that she has an extremely low sense of self-worth and that it existed even back then. So this definitely appears to be Jenn in the foreground, perhaps. I find it interesting that the photo she's used is basically her with 3 guys. Again, it's that whole sense of self-worth that basically is based around how people see you, how people perceive you. And for her, the image here is about, hey, look at me hanging with a bunch of guys. So the perception here that she wants people to have is that not only did a guy find her attractive, but hey, look at all these other guys that want to be with me. So again, we have her working up towards another high. 9th of April 2009. It snowed yesterday. Today was 60 degrees and wonderful. What is it with this wacky weather? Well, anyway, Andy, Tony, Buddy and I had a Colombian picnic at Flushing Meadows Park. Empanadas, Colombiana, sandwiches and cookies. Lovely. But now I feel like a fat ass. She's really obsessed with her weight even back then. I'm happy, so happy. I moved back to Florida in 15 days. I start school May 11th. Things are starting to look up. Pics soon. Again, why is she happy? She's happy because she got to be the centre of attention. She is talking again about 3 guys, probably the 3 guys that we saw in the photo. It definitely sounds like she has had this desperate need to be accepted, this need to belong somewhere. Because the happiest posts are the ones where she's been in social situations where she's getting attention from multiple people. And then, of course, she's happy about moving back to Florida and starting school. Okay, so this is clearly a quote. Kane can explain this better than I. Probably a song. Do let me know. It's clearly not one that I'm aware of. 10th of April, 2:59 p.m. And she's got, man, I promise, she's so self-conscious. She has no idea what she's doing in college. That major that she majored in don't make no money. But she won't drop out. Her parents will look at her funny. Now tell me that ain't insecure. The concept of school seems so secure. Sophomore, 3 years, ain't picked a career. This really does tell us so much about Jenn. Her whole direction is about getting approval from her parents. She clearly doesn't want to be in college, but it seems that there is probably that expectation that she is going to go to college and get a degree, and that her parents won't approve if she drops out. Sophomore, 3 years, ain't picked a career. Honestly, I think that is one of the biggest mistakes that society makes, is that we send young people off to college or at university is what we call it here in Australia, and they're still kids, really. I mean, starting university when you're 17 or 18, you've got no life experience. You really don't know what you want to do with your life a lot of the time. But there is this expectation that you are going to go to college and you are going to get a degree, and that you're going to head straight into a job afterwards. And that's so unrealistic. I mean, even when I did my first university degree, I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and I did eventually do that. But I finished my first degree, and for several years I was like, oh, I'm not sure if this is the direction I want to do. And instead I found myself going from working as a manager in a business to running a business before I basically got out of that and went back to university to get my postgraduate degree. And yet, so often there is very little encouragement given to young people to, hey, just take a gap year, go travel, or go do a job that isn't necessarily what you want for a career, but just something that's going to earn you money and allow you to learn what independence is, allow you to learn what the real world is like. But instead we send these essentially still children off to college and say, you need to know what you want to do for the rest of your life now. And maybe with someone like Jenn, where chances of them actually succeeding at university and heading out and getting a career with their university degree are quite slim, maybe there should be more of a focus on encouraging them to follow their dreams or to look at alternate career paths that don't require a university degree, like becoming a concierge at Disney as a 18-year-old instead of waiting till you are 37 when you've got no real experience of actually sticking to a job. And perhaps this is where a lot of the conflict between Jenn and her mother came from. The fact that Jenn was basically doing a university degree that was going to get her nowhere because she had no motivation to actually succeed. So given this is already quite long, I'm going to wrap it up here and come back with a part 2 tomorrow. So if you are new to my channel, please subscribe. And of course, please hit the like button because that helps my videos to get out there into the algorithm. And please leave a comment below. Thank you very much for listening to this. And I hope that you will come back tomorrow for part 2. So thank you, and I'll catch you in the next one.